This is the Solid Signal podcast for the week of September 11th, 2017. And you know, Monday is September 11th. You may be listening to this on Tuesday because that's when I usually put it up on the Solid Signal blog. But Monday is September 11th, and I think that it would be remiss of me not to at least mention anybody who's at least over 20 years old remembers September 11th, 2001. And while this podcast isn't about that, it's almost impossible to think about it being September 11th of any year without focusing on where one was that particular day and how one was feeling. It's hard to believe it's been 16 years, and in a lot of ways we're still not whole as a country, but just kind of taking a moment to think about that. But moving ahead, we've got a whole podcast to do, so let's go ahead and do that. The subject for the week is the small amplified antenna. You know, it's very possible to get an antenna these days that's under about 30 inches in diameter and that's amplified and advertises itself as having 50, 60, or 70 mile range. Some manufacturers are a little bit more ethical and some less when it comes to that sort of thing, unfortunately, so it's really hard to take any manufacturer seriously when they say those things, even the more ethical ones. But it makes you think that in the past, you required a very, very large antenna in order to make 70 mile range. And how is it possible that one under 30 inches in size is going to have that kind of range? Well, first of all, let's back up and say, why are those antennas so popular at all? It's not just a matter of not wanting a big antenna, because, I know that some people do think antennas are unsightly and therefore they do not want large ones up on their roof. There's a rule that says that if an antenna itself is over 39 inches in any measurement, top, bottom, side, whatever, that a homeowners association or condo board or apartment complex can reject it completely. And if it's smaller than that size, then you can put it up in your private space as long as you don't damage anything belonging to someone else. In other words, if you have a small antenna, you can put it on your patio if the patio doesn't face the public area. If you are in an HOA neighborhood, you could put up an antenna smaller than that if it doesn't face the street in a certain way. The details of it are a little bit harder to nail down, but the point is this has made smaller antennas much more popular than they would have been. Another factor is that with UHF being the most common form of broadcasting now, as opposed to the old channel 2 through 13 VHF, which was common back in the 20th century, smaller antennas do actually work better. Now, a lot of markets do have at least one VHF station, and more are going to have VHF stations when the FCC is done shuffling things up in the next 2 years. But at least for now, you can say that you can usually get almost every channel you want, unless you're in a major city, if you just use a UHF-only antenna or one with limited VHF capacity. This means a small antenna is going to work very well. Finally, when you look at the amplifiers that are in use now, as opposed to those that were used 20 or even 30 years ago, the amplifiers today are a lot cleaner, they're a lot better, and they tend to just work better than they used to. And that means that you're going to get a signal that's stronger once it's done being amplified and isn't as noisy. The noise in it is probably the most important part of the whole package. And if you have a signal that's too noisy, it doesn't matter how strong it is, it's still not going to work. But let me say this. There are going to be limitations to a small antenna. I would not personally believe that a small antenna under 39 inches in size is ever going to bring in signals from 70 miles away reliably. 45 to 50, I could believe in some situations, especially if you've got some elevation on it, if you happen to be up at the top of a hill and get a clean line of sight to those broadcast towers. But 70, no, I don't believe it. And I know that some of the antennas that we sell at solidsignal.com do, in fact, say they're 70-mile antennas, and we're repeating the manufacturer's claim as best we can, but we tend to not necessarily recommend those antennas if we're given the opportunity to say so professionally. So, be careful when using a small antenna. That's about all I've got for today, and I'll see you again next week.